and a colleague will tell us once we are actually live.
I think I'll assume that we've gone live because I can see the little live flag up on my screen.
There is a slight delay. Harry, can you confirm? It's live. Excellent.
Great. Well, welcome everyone to a meeting of Oxford City Council's full council meeting. It's actually the first full meeting we've had, you know, full of motions and questions, and the first full format meeting we've had since January, and obviously a lot's changed since then. We've had other meetings that have been linked to sort of budgets or full annual council meetings or the local plan, but this is the first sort of proper format meeting we've had. So hopefully we'll have a smooth ride of technology wise, but we'll see, we'll do our best. So welcome to councillors, officers, and anyone watching on YouTube. So we'll start with apologies for absence. Jennifer, do we have any apologies?
Lord Mayor, we have apologies this evening from Councillor Jafari Marbini and Councillor Humberston, and we also have apologies from the City Rector. I don't have any others.
Great. Does anyone else have any apologies to convey?
Could I convey apologies on behalf of Councillor Sim, please?
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Great. Okay, let's proceed. So next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to make about any of the items on this evening's agenda? And if you do later decide you should make a declaration of interest, of course you can do that at the time. Any declarations of interest?
Lord Mayor,
Yep.
It's Councillor Ross Smith. I'm not sure if I need to declare an interest with regard to one of the motions which refers to the Oxfordshire Pension Fund, in so much as I serve on that committee and have a vote.
Right.
I'm happy to be advised.
Yes, Anita, legal officer, do you have any advice there for Councillor Ross Smith?
In respect of making your position clear, it would come down to whether or not you felt that you were comfortable to take part in that. But I think for the record, it would be better that you perhaps didn't take part in relation to it. So you would declare that you have a disclosable pecuniary interest in that matter.
Okay, and I'm guessing while Anita, while you're on speaking, I guess there are a number of councillors, I'm guessing, who are beneficiaries of that pension scheme. Do they have to declare an interest, just to make that clear?
No, I don't think it. I think it's in relation to the fact that Councillor Smith is in a decision-making position in relation to that pension fund.
Okay, thank you. We have a hand up from Councillor Ligo.
And I'm a Labour shadow spokesman, I was just going to abstain from this motion.
Okay, noted. Thank you very much. And if people who've spoken could put their blue hands, their virtual hands down, and when they've spoken, that would be great. Thank you. So Sean Taylor, you still have that hand up. Do you wish to speak again?
No, apologies. I'll take my hand down now.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. We're all getting used to technology. Great. So thank you very much. We've had declaration of interest. So item 3, we have minutes of previous council meetings. So these are just for matters of accuracy only. So these are minutes that have happened. So I understand Councillor Gant, you wish to raise a matter of accuracy.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. It's on page 37 of the main agenda, the minutes of the Budget Council in February. It's been raised with me by members of my group about whether the voting has been recorded accurately. I have mentioned this to officers, and I'd like to propose that we agree these minutes subject to that being checked by officers on the video record and corrected if necessary.
Yeah, I think that's fine, perfectly reasonable, and I think it was a recorded vote anyway, so we should have a record of it. So that's fine. Thank you for raising that. Any other matters of accuracy on the minutes of previous council meetings? Nope. I will then move on. Thank you. To item 4, appointments to committees, and so we have one notified in the agenda, which is West Area Planning Committee, Councillor Wade to replace Councillor Harris. Are there any further changes?
Yes, Lord Mayor, I believe that Councillor Richard Tarver is going to take over from Councillor Marie Tidball on West Area Planning Committee.
Thanks. For Councillor Tarver replacing Councillor Tidball on West Area Planning. Thank you very much. If that's all, thank you. We'll move on to item 5, which is announcements. Start with my announcements. So just really firstly about the way we're going to run this meeting, because obviously we normally have a break to eat. I don't think that will be practical, but I am suggesting we have a 15-minute comfort break before the motions, so before item 14. So that will roughly be, I think, around about 7 o'clock, but we've been going 2 hours by then. So I think a 15-minute comfort break is reasonable. Also, in terms of public speakers, normally we ask public speakers to turn up at a particular time. We've asked them virtually this time to turn up around 6 o'clock. So at 6 or soon after, wherever we are in the agenda at a convenient time, we'll break to hear public speakers. And then just some more general announcements on what I've been doing as Lord Mayor. Clearly, there's not anywhere near the number of engagements that I was going to pre-COVID, but there have been quite a few and a growing number of online events and video messages. So I recently did a video message for Perm Day for our twin town in Russia. And indeed, I've got to provide them with a recipe for their cookbook. That'll be interesting. And also I had a video message marking the 25th anniversary of the genocide in Srebrenica, and I joined our MP Annalise Dodds in making a video message on that. I've also had many multi-faith online meetings, and the faith groups have taken to online presence with gusto, and that's been very nice. I've also had a meeting with the new High Sheriff of Oxfordshire, Amanda Ponsonby, and I even did a music video for the Global Eid event, which was great fun. I'm not sure the audience liked it as much, but it was good fun for me. And just a reminder also, should have mentioned this in the procedures, if you are leaving the meeting for any reason, and I know some people prefer to have their cameras off, which is fine, but if you are actually not there, you do need to notify in the chat that that's the case. Otherwise, obviously, we could be taking votes and be calling your name and not knowing whether or not you're there. So just if you do leave the meeting for any reason, even if you're still connected, do make it clear that you have left. Thank you. So now we have announcement by the Sheriff. So Sheriff, do you have any announcements to make?
Thanks, my Lord Mayor. Well, very much like you, the number of official engagements I've been involved in the last few months have been rather few on the ground. As may have been mentioned, of course, there was, and it feels like years ago, a Freeman's admission ceremony involving, of course, a member of your own family who ended up being obliged to obey you in all matters, which I'm sure has made your home life considerably easier the last few months. That was done virtually, and very successfully it was too. Other than that, I have very little to report, except for the general observation that, of course, the Sheriff's position is associated with Port Meadow. As colleagues will be aware, Port Meadow has been a popular go-to destination in recent weeks, and I'd like to pay tribute to the extraordinary work done by the Countryside team in doing their best to keep it as usable and wildlife friendly as they possibly can under the pressure it's been under. They've done a frankly amazing job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we have a question about that later, so no chance for the portfolio holder to elaborate a little bit on measures. So Leader of Council, Susan Brown.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to reconfirm, as is sort of traditional at this point in the sort of council year, the council champions, and they look remarkably similar, in fact, to the list of council champions in last year. So, but let me run through them. There are a few very minor changes in terms of people's the sort of titles of people's roles. So Councillor Shaista Aziz is the Race and Equalities Champion. Councillor Colin Cook is the Heritage Champion. Councillor Jafari Marbini is the Migrant Champion. Councillor Pat Kennedy is the Older People's Champion. Councillor Mark Ligo is the Sports Champion. Councillor Richard Howlett is the Cooperatives Champion, and Councillor Martin Rush is the Living Wage Champion. And I'd like to thank all of them for the hard work that they've already undertaken in those roles, and for their continued support to the Cabinet in some really exciting ways in which... no, I've forgotten one, I'm sorry. I realised that I've forgotten Councillor Choi Mung Konge, who is the Small Business Champion. I knew I'd do this, so I do apologise. I was trying to read people out in alphabetical order and got lost somewhere in the middle, but that's I think is the full range of champions so far appointed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm sure Council would like to add its thanks to yours for their work, and obviously many of them are continuing this year. So just an opportunity for Chief Executive to make any announcements.
None, Lord Mayor.
Great. Okay, let's move on to the next. We have public addresses. So I don't think we have no public addresses under item 6. We do have some speakers later on items on the agenda. So we move straight to item 7, which is the polling places review. And I believe, Councillor Brown, you're going to be introducing this item. So it's pages 57 of the agenda.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'd actually like to take this opportunity to correct really some of the possible misapprehensions that there have been about this report. This is a very technical report required basically because our elections were postponed for a year, and it may be that we never need to use this particular report. The gist is that because we have had our elections postponed, if there are any by-elections allowed by the government, which currently they are not allowing by-elections, but if any by-elections are allowed, then they will need to be on the old boundaries if they happen before November. So there's a lot of ifs in this report, essentially, and that is so that we all are representing the same areas, and there isn't any confusion between sitting councillors as we progress towards what we hope will be normal elections next year in May, and there will of course be all-out elections on the new boundaries. If any by-election were to be triggered post-November, then actually that by-election would be held over until the May elections in any case, and so therefore would be on the new boundaries. And that's essentially what this report sets out. So I hope that people are happy to approve it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions at all on item 7? Polling. I think I was notified of Councillor Gant wanted to ask a question. Is that still the case? We have, yeah, Councillor Gant, I see your hand's gone up.
Yes, thanks, Lord Mayor. Just to say, yes, as Councillor Brown says, this is clearly a technical and necessary piece of work. It is predicated on the understanding that government is not allowing by-elections, but has said it will keep the situation under review. So my question is simply, has there been any sort of indication from government about its thinking on this, and has there been any communication from this council, urging any particular outcome?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Gant. I've certainly raised with government the importance of elections, and I don't think specifically the issue of by-elections. It certainly has been raised by the LGA with government, and I think that you know, many councils would welcome the chance to have by-elections, but there are some councils, of course, who had their elections postponed for at least 2 years now, and I imagine it would be particularly the case for those councils. But as yet, we have not heard back. We have not had any indication from government that they are likely to be pushing for by-elections to be possible before November. However, they've not given us much warning about any other policy change, so who knows? It could happen tomorrow for all I know.
Thank you. I mean, I have a question. So at the moment, people can obviously step down from being a councillor, but we have no way of plugging that democratic gap that's left. Is that understanding? So there'll just be a vacant post.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yep. I see Martin John is our elections officer, is also nodding there. So, and Councillor Taylor, you still have your virtual hand up. Is that a new virtual hand, or was that from a previous question? It's now
no,
down.
I have no idea what happened there, but
It's now
hopefully
down.
it's
Thank
down
you.
now. Apologies.
It is.
Again.
That's okay. That's okay. Maybe it's the buttons pressing is a bit too enthusiastic. Fine. So now, if there's any other questions on this item 7, I think we'll go to a vote. We have to vote this through. So I think Jennifer's going to do a roll call.
I am. Lord Mayor, can I just check who seconded?
Do we have a seconder for this? I'll second it. Just
Okay.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
That's okay. I like to keep things moving. So now, if you want to go to the vote, there will also explain the procedure for people.
Okay, I will call out names in alphabetical order by surname, and if you can say whether you're voting for, against, or abstaining on this. So the proposal is as set out in the report. Councillor Altaf Khan, how are you voting?
For.
For. Councillor Arshad? Councillor Arshad? Councillor Azad?
For.
Or Councillor Aziz? Councillor Aziz?
For.
Or Councillor Bentley Summers?
For.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Or Councillor Chapman?
For.
Councillor Clarkson?
For.
Councillor Cook?
For.
Councillor Corres?
For.
Councillor Curran?
For.
Councillor Donnelly?
For.
Councillor Fry?
For.
Councillor Gant?
For.
Councillor Garden?
For.
Councillor Goddard?
For.
Councillor Gotch, I think might need to be allowed to speak as he's on the phone.
For.
Or, thank you, Councillor Gotch. Councillor McHaines? Councillor Harris?
For.
Councillor Hayes?
For.
Councillor Henwood?
For.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
For.
Councillor Howlett?
For.
Councillor Riley Williamson?
For.
Councillor Kennedy?
For.
Councillor Landell Mills?
For.
Councillor Lloyd Basin?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ligo?
For.
Councillor McManus?
For.
Councillor Malik?
For.
Councillor Munkongi?
For.
Councillor Pressel?
For.
Sorry, Councillor Pressel?
For.
4, thank you. Councillor Rowley,
4.
Councillor Rush,
4.
Councillor Sim, Councillor Simmons,
4.
Councillor Linda Smith,
4.
Councillor Ross Smith,
4.
Councillor Tanner, Councillor Tanner, Councillor Tarver,
4.
or Councillor Taylor,
4.
Councillor Tidball,
4.
Councillor Turner,
4.
Councillor Upton,
4.
Councillor Wade,
4.
Councillor Wolfe.
4.
Can I just check if I have missed anyone? Could you raise your hand or unmute and call out?
Councillor Lubnar, apologies, Jennifer, it's 4.
That's okay, 4, thank you. Okay, so I have
I think that's probably
3 no
unanimous
votes,
at least.
3 no
Yeah.
votes, and everyone else in favour.
Great, thank you. It gets very tedious to do the roll call, but it seems to me that that's the preferred way to do votes. We might try for some of the amendments and motions later to try with the blue hands and see how we go, which is allowed under our constitution. I just fear the whole process will grind to a halt if we continue to do roll calls for every motion and amendment. But let's see how we go. So we're on to item 8, which is, sorry, so that's passed, thank you. On to item 8, which decisions taken under part 9.3 and 9b and 9.3c of the Constitution. So I believe this is going to be introduced by Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. So these cover 3 fairly large decisions taken for the short period under which we were not able to meet as a council, and therefore some decisions had to be taken by the Chief Executive using his discretionary powers to do so. The 3 decisions were that we needed to obviously undertake some additional expenditure connected to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that included, for instance, really important items such as accommodation for rough sleepers, a fairly substantial, as you would expect, sum of money for additional ICT, and some very important expenditure in relation to food parcels for people who are vulnerable at this particular time. The second major item was to make payments to staff at ODSL and in the City Council who were being furloughed to make up their pay to 100% of pay, and also to use the furlough scheme. And the final and very important item is about discretionary payments to local businesses to be able to expend the money passed through to us by government. So all 3 of them very much related to the pandemic, and I think decisions that we would have supported anyway, but were in fact taken, and therefore this report is actually in front of us to note rather than anything else.
Yes, thank you very much. As Councillor Brown says, these decisions will be made. They're here for us to note, but it is an opportunity for anyone to ask any questions. So does anyone have any questions on item 8? Councillor Wolfe, you have your hand up.
I do indeed, Lord Mayor. I'm in the right place in the paperwork here. Additional one-off ICT software, £455,000. Sounded like quite a lot of money to me. I'm just wondering what it went on. I mean, it may be related to more than just response to COVID. It may be part of an ongoing home working programme that we've got, but I'd quite like to know how we spend nearly £500,000 on ICT for COVID.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wolfe. Our cabinet meeting, and we had some discussion about this then. It is actually purely related to the pandemic. There is already an ongoing programme, and has been for some time, of investment in ICT and including in home working. But this was quite a substantial, as you can imagine, difference from before, where although we have been encouraging home working and trying to make it easy for people to do that, that's quite a big difference between that and taking the entire council and enabling them to work at home. So not everybody had laptops and the ability to work at home. So I would really like to take this opportunity to commend the ICT team at the council, who have done a remarkable piece of work in actually enabling so many people to work very easily at home, and that includes many councillors who have also benefited from this scheme as well, enabled us to be able to do things like join these kind of meetings easily with the right equipment. I think it is a substantial sum of money, but that is the cost of being able to work remotely, I think it's money well spent in terms of being enabling the council to carry on carrying out its work.
Thank you. We have also Councillor Rowley wanting to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think it's worth saying, in addition to Susan's summary of the decisions, that they were taken with the full knowledge and agreement of the cabinet, and indeed, albeit that couldn't be formally done under the regulations as they were at the time, and indeed that the leader did bring the leaders of the opposition groups into those informal Zoom meetings to provide a degree of democratic scrutiny that it wasn't possible to have under formal meetings at the time. So thanks, Susan.
Yeah, thank you for that point of clarification. Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Yeah, we're all joining in on this one. It's a good question. I think it might be better to explain this wasn't, as I understand it, just about software. So I'm looking at the list of items, and as I understand it, some of them were smartphones and monitors, home printers, and so on, and indeed headsets, all things to facilitate home working. It wasn't just about the software. I'm sure officers could share the exact details of what was procured, but quite agree that the efforts involved in flicking a switch and seeing large swathes of the council working virtually for the first time have been really, really impressive. The other side of that coin, just while I've got the floor, Lord Mayor, is of course that councillors did a great job in carrying on with their work, often balancing caring, childcare responsibilities at the same time, and it's really impressed me how people have carried on with that.
No, thank you. Good point. And again, thank you to all officers and councillors who struggled on and kept the democratic processes going. Councillor Tom Landor-Mills, you have your hand up.
With regard to the additional top up on the furlough payments, how was the decision made to basically top up the money when, I mean, many of the people, local people who are self-employed or employed with a private sector thing wouldn't be able to top up their money? And I'm concerned also about, well, particularly for more highly paid staff to get a top up. I mean, I can see maybe there's an argument for people on lower wages, but with people on higher wages, I don't know. And I just wondered, thinking behind the argument and the use of the council's money for this, how was the decision made to justify this?
Councillor Brown, do you want to respond?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I think we have taken the view consistently over many years, and I would say with cross-party support, that we want to be a living wage employer, an Oxford living wage employer, and that we believe that it's important to pay people a decent rate of pay. I think that good employers across the country have made sure that their employees don't lose out because they have been furloughed and have topped up the difference. So I think we are just following good employment practice by doing that, and I think it was the right decision to take.
Thank you very much. I think that's clear. Can I ask a question about the IT? Is there a plan to sort of recover some of that value of the IT? Should we move back to normal working? I know the write down on IT equipment's about 3 years, so you would expect it to have value of some form for about 3 years. Is there any plan, or is it the intention to try to accrue back some of that money? I mean, or maybe we haven't thought about it yet because it's difficult to know when we're going to go back to normal.
I think it probably is too early to take those sorts of decisions, and I think that one of the things that we have discovered through this period, and we've done some good staff surveying work, is that many staff have really found working from home to be quite beneficial in terms of their work-life balance and their efficacy in their roles, and there is no obvious sign that we would be wanting to bring back large numbers of people to work in office space together at this point in time. So I don't think it's a decision that we could really be looking to take at this moment. I think we're potentially keeping people working from home to some extent, at least for a while yet. And so just on the issue of ICT equipment, I thought I had made myself clear when responding to Councillor Wolf, but perhaps I didn't, because other people then sort of went on to correct it. It certainly wasn't just about software. This was the entire gamut of ICT support, from hardware, software, mobile technology, etc. So it's the whole piece.
Great, well, thank you for that clarification. We've had a good, robust debate, discussion on this, and we're just noting the decision. So take it that Council has noted item 8, decisions made under the parts 9.3 A, B and C of the Constitution. So thank you very much. Let's move on to item 9. So that's questions on cabinet minutes. So this items has a time limit of 15 minutes, which normally is fine, but we have rather a large number of cabinet minutes to go through. So what I intend to do is just to page them by date rather than by page of council cabinet minutes. And if people have any questions to raise on any item on the agenda of that particular date cabinet, then do let me know. Everything's on the main agenda pack except for the most recent minutes, the 15th of July, and they're on the briefing notes. So does anyone have any questions on the Wednesday 12th of February cabinet minutes? Councillor Gant.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Yes, I'm referring to paragraph 137, which is on page 74 of the main agenda pack. And this is a response from the Cabinet in response to concerns raised at, or at least issues raised at scrutiny, speaking now not in my capacity as a member or chair of the scrutiny committee, but just questioning the matters that the Cabinet discussed around the effectiveness of ANPR as the enforcement mechanism for the proposed zone. It says there that there is no evidence that the concerns were valid. As I recall, the system that was proposed about which concerns were expressed was described as being 2 or 3 handheld cameras. Is that still the proposal for the zone?
I guess that's Councillor Hayes to respond to that. I think it's his portfolio.
Thanks, Councillor Gant. It's still a proposal that we would have handheld ANPR, but as to the number, we haven't fixed that. As you'd imagine, with the pandemic having happened and the postponement of the consultation on the zero emission zone, we're taking a few things back in-house to give them consideration. So I can come back to him with more information by email if it's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for ANPR is automatic number plate recognition for people who didn't know what that was. Any other questions on the 12th of February minutes? So move to 11th of March 2020. Any questions or comments? No one's put their hands up to 8th of June 2020. 24th of June. Councillor Gant.
Sorry about my dogs. Also, I must apologise, Lord Mayor, but I've been a bit premature. That was meant to be for the next set on the 15th of July. Apologies.
I don't think anyone's, you sound a little hoarse, but nothing on, so no one else has put their hands up. So do feel free to go ahead and ask questions on the 15th of July.
Certainly, thank you very much. So these are, as you mentioned in the briefing notes, I'm referring to paragraph 31, which is on page 9 of the briefing note. And this is about an update to the terms of reference and memorandum of understanding around the growth board. So it's really just a comment and a question to go with it, just to make sure that Council was aware that this is in the context of the ongoing debate around governance structures regionally in all sorts of different ways, but also about the phasing of this, because this is quite a good example of the way that decision making works within the growth board, it seems to me. And I'd be interested to know if the leader, as our representative, has any views about this. But specifically, the growth board does not decide matters like this. They are sovereign matters for decision by the individual councils. However, because of course they have to go to all the councils, that means that the opportunity for any individual council to actually change them is essentially zero. In addition to that, the Growth Board Scrutiny Panel, which this council has 3 members on, of which I am one, like all the others, is actually seeing these terms of reference on Wednesday. In other words, after this council and I think 2 others have already passed them. So I just wonder if the leader, as our representative on the Growth Board, has any comments about the logic of that process.
Councillor Brown, would you like to respond?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I think that is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is to say that at the moment nothing can happen on the growth board without this city council having a say in it and having a decision finally to take on it. So nothing can be done to us without us agreeing to it, and I think that's very important. So before anything appears before you, it has to have been broadly agreed between all of the leaders of the other councils, which means that generally by the time it does appear in front of you, it is something that we should be able to sign up to, and not feel unhappy about having something being done to us. And that is the benefit of working in partnership with different councils, as opposed to having a council dictate to the people of Oxford what is to be done in their name.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any further questions on 15th of July? Okay, thank you very much. And we're within time on that, looking at my stopwatch. So thank you very much. Let's move on to item 10, which is questions on notice from members of council. So these are questions which have been submitted by members of council to cabinet members and the leader of the council. There are responses recorded on the briefing note. And the questioners get the opportunity, if they wish to, they don't have to ask one supplementary question, and I'll be going through the questions one at a time. So firstly, a question from me to Councillor Clarkson around street traders, so no supplementary. Question 2 from Councillor Wolf to Councillor Clarkson, noise nuisance environmental health team responses. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, Lord Mayor, yeah. The cuts to the noise service midweek, the assumption there really is that most noise nuisance occurs at weekends. I'm not actually sure that that's a correct assumption. So I'm wondering, when the review is conducted, will the portfolio holder ensure that the times when the app was used to report noise do actually reflect that assumption that the noise nuisance is occurring at weekends? We can then use that to assess whether in fact we need to be reinstating it midweek. That's my experience in East Oxford, that actually weekends are not necessarily the noisiest time.
Councillor Clarkson, would you like to respond?
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Yes, Councillor Wolf, I think that's really sensible that we do look at all the times when we get noise nuisance and we don't make those assumptions about weekends. I think over the last few months, we've seen a lot more noise nuisance and different patterns, partly because of lockdown, and also a lot more reporting because people are at home. So we'll take that on board, but accept that it's very atypical. But yeah, completely take your point that we need to look at weekday as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Question 3 from me to Councillor Chapman. That's fine. Thank you very much for your response. Question 4, another one from me to Councillor Chapman. Thank you very much for your thorough answer. I do have a supplementary. I totally understand that this is something which we are obliged to do, but given that it does, give potential stress, and particularly thinking about our responses to those who might have been fleeing a abusive relationship, it seems to me that something we should be trying to make some representations about, or trying to see if there's any other way we can possibly avoid stressing people in this way.
Well, as you know, Lord Mayor, I'm sympathetic to this issue, and will go away and see what we can do to make representations, and also to reduce the absolute minimum references to both partners in the same correspondence. Because I think what upset your constituent, as far as I understand it, was references to her former partner in the correspondence, and I do understand that it sort of opens up memories that people perhaps might want to put behind them. So I'm very much with you in the spirit of this. I'm talking to the Chief Finance Officer to see whether we can do anything more. But the core statement that has to go out about council tax liability, if it's jointly liable, it needs to be in joint names. Otherwise, we can't pursue the matter if somebody were to end up defaulting against their payments. So that, there's a technical issue here, which I know you appreciate, but the stuff around the sides of it, which can be softened, and I will do my very best to work with the Chief Finance Officer to make sure we do that.
Thank you very much, much appreciated. Question 5, Councillor Wolf to Councillor Turner, exposure to a downturn in City's retail sector. Is there any supplementary?
Yes, there is, Lord Mayor. Thank you ever so much, Ed, for a very thorough reply. I warmly welcome the proposal to involve ward councillors in disseminating information about grants and increasing the uptake. I'm sure that all councillors would be very pleased to help. Would he be willing to set up a briefing session for councillors so we can learn how these schemes are supposed to work and update us as things evolve? Because I don't think I have much idea actually what schemes the government's thrown in and what's going on. It would be quite useful to have a briefing session if that could be set up.
Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So my understanding and my memory was that there was a list of businesses that hadn't claimed mandatory reliefs circulated to all councillors some time ago. Certainly, I went round to visit the businesses listed in my patch, and actually a number of them been in touch subsequently to thank me for doing that, and I know other councillors will have done likewise. So that was what I was referring to in the answer. But I think the council makes a good point actually about engaging ward councillors more widely. So happy to respond to requests for a briefing. I mean, my thought in terms of what would be most useful would be perhaps an informational email with a kind of an optional briefing, so that everyone gets some of the opportunity, and then those that want to pursue it in more depth can answer questions about the support that's available. Maybe I mean, a thought is maybe we can also include in that someone to do Q&A on some of the other strands of our work to support the local economies, so things like the engagement with businesses to help them with the new health and safety rules, that sort of thing, to sort of sweep it all up. But no, welcome the interest, and I'm sure we can set something up, and I'll cheerfully volunteer our officers to do that. More generally, I've also found, just as an aside, that when I've contacted economic development officers or the incomes team about particular queries, they have responded. So don't be shy about being in touch with them on behalf of people in your wards. But then if things aren't satisfactory, then again, do give me a shout.
Okay, thank you. Question 6 from Councillor Gant to Councillor Turner, business rates relief for language schools. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Gant? Councillor Gant, are you there? Do you have a supplementary?
Sorry, I did reply, but it obviously didn't work. No supplementary, thank you.
Right, thank you. Question 7 from me to Councillor Hayes. That's no supplementary. Thank you for your response. Question 8, Councillor Wolf to Councillor Hayes, Citizens Assembly progress update. Do you have any supplementary?
Yes, just one small one. Thank you, Tom, for the answer. And there's one thing I was particularly interested in, which I don't think I see the answer to, and that's about the assessment that was going on on our council housing stock about what we're actually faced with the challenge of retrofit and all that stuff. My understanding was that our officers were actually carrying out that assessment, and we might be getting near to hearing what they're going to report back. I mean, maybe I'm premature, but could you just fill me in a little bit on actually how that assessment work is going and whether it's leading to a report?
Councillor Hayes, would you like to respond?
Yeah, just to say that there was the assessment work going on the housing stock. My understanding is that it's continuing, but no doubt it has been affected by the response to the pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Goddard to Councillor Linda Smith, deterring litter. Do you have a supplementary at all?
I do, my Lord Mayor, if I may. Thank you very much to the councillor for her response. I note that at least one Meadow adjacent Labour councillor was in favour of the more ribald campaign, but also note that a significant threat to livestock is that of abandoned dog mess bags, which at various points on Meadow are absolutely, for want of a better term, rampant. And so I wondered whether particular emphasis could be put on using bins and litter collection, which she mentions in her response, to try and combat this, put them in places where people might be more inclined to sling bags into bins rather than into hedgerows, and could Meadow adjacent councillors be kept up to speed with any improvements on that front that are going to be made? Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Smith, would you like to respond?
Just to say that communications will be ongoing during the summer, and a large part of that will, of course, be telling people to take their litter home or, put it in a bin. So yes, and I'm happy to keep local councillors informed about all the work that will be going into helping to keep Port Meadow.
Okay, thank you. A similar question from me to Councillor Smith about Port Meadow littering. Thank you for your response. I don't have any supplementary. Question 11, Councillor Wolf to Councillor Hollingsworth, accurately defining zero carbon homes. Do you have a supplementary at all?
I do, yes. I mean, this is a big one, really, the confusion over what is zero carbon. These things get bandied around. It's very helpful to have a reply that gives a fairly clear perspective on, quite a significant difference between what central government considers zero carbon and what anybody else might. So could you confirm that the government definition of zero carbon is that a property may be deemed zero carbon even though it's not thermally efficient, provided any energy the householder buys in is renewable? Would he consider this to be a disincentive to us in taking the fabric first approach to new building, where the structure itself is aiming to be passive house? And if it is a disincentive, will Oxford City be aiming higher, or are the government's weaker standards going to be what we apply so long as this weaker government definition is in force?
There's actually several questions there, so I'm
Sorry
sure
about
Councillor
that.
Hollings will maybe answer one or more if he sees able and circulate the answers to the rest. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Yes, there were possibly I missed the earliest question. There was a bit of disturbance on the line. The first and technical question, I think in simple layman's terms, the nationally understood definition of zero carbon is that encompasses the energy which is covered by regulations. So the building regulations, it's often referred to as regulated energy. So in very layman's terms, it's the energy used to heat and ventilate the house. It does not include the energy used for phone chargers and kettles and toasters. I think Councillor Wolf and I agree that that is not a satisfactory definition, but nonetheless, since the gist of his question was that we should have one definition, that is the one definition that is set down by government. I think one of his follow-up questions related to the standards the council will aim for in its own developments. Obviously, in the local plan, we've set the government standard because that's what we're required. Well, that's what we're able to do within the confines of that. When it comes to our own developments, the recent developments, which were the subject of his question, do achieve the government standard. And I think the onus is on us to look at the viability. I know it's a vexed word when it comes to planning, but I think it's a sensible word to use here of going further as soon as we can and where we can. And that's something I think which the council has repeatedly said that it aspires to do, but it's got to do it on a case-by-case basis going forward. If there were other questions in there which I've missed, I do apologise.
Yeah, I'm sure Councillor Wolf, you'll send any further questions by email to Councillor Hollingsworth for him to answer. Question 12, Councillor Rod Smith, the Councillor Hollingsworth Landlord Accreditation Scheme. Councillor Smith, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do have a follow-up. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth, for your answer. I was pleased to see, in fact, actually, that one landlord has lost their accreditation and 8 applications have been refused. I recently had some quite distressing casework where a young man had come to Oxford, had signed a 6-month lease contract, but after 2.5 weeks, he was given notice that he had 3 weeks to leave. And I checked his landlord's website as such, quite distressed to see that in fact he was on the accreditation, City Council's landlord accreditation scheme. Would he agree with me that this sort of behaviour would constitute a breach of the accreditation scheme and should be investigated?
Without knowing the details of the case, I can't comment on that. I'm sure the councillor will have already referred the particular case and all the details to the appropriate officers so they can investigate it. That's how to do it, rather than perhaps wait until the council meeting. So I'm sure it will already have been done.
I should have said I had already done that and not had a response from the council.
Okay, so I'm sure Councillor Hollingsworth will be in touch further to see that. Just a general reminder, because I got caught out myself, when we ask questions, we shouldn't, when we're doing things that relate to casework, even though there might well be a good example of some general problem, we can't allow anyone to be sort of personally identified in those questions. So I understand that this isn't one of those cases, but you can imagine how we might get to that point. So just to be wary when you're posing questions. Question 13, for me to Councillor Hollingsworth, thank you very much for your answer. My supplementaries, you don't actually sort of quite answer, I think, in a yes, no. Will portfolio consider the donut framework for the next iteration of the local plan? I think you're a very positive response, but you haven't actually said yes or no.
Sorry, I was so overcome with my own eloquence and the wisdom of your question that perhaps I omitted to answer in those simple terms. You'll see a question later on where I just used yes or no. I think my only reservation is that I'd very much like Dr. Rawworth to be available, but a glance at her website recently, before your question actually, showed me that she is extremely busy and in very high demand. So whether we'll actually get the woman herself, I do not know, though it would be good if we could. But her visualization tool, I think, is one that we will definitely want to use going forward. So yes, with that slight reservation.
Thank you for that. I can certainly give you contacts later.
I have contacts. It's whether she has time is the issue.
Well, we have the lab but anyway, I've used up my supplementary. So question 14, Councillor Gant to Councillor Hollingsworth, policy making in planning. Do you have a supplementary?
No supplementary. Thank you for the answer. I particularly enjoyed the last sentence.
Great. I think we need to move quickly. We're going to get to 6 o'clock quite soon for the public speakers, but we can go a little bit over, but we're just over halfway through the question. So question 15, Councillor Ross Smith to Councillor Hollingsworth or Chapman, it says, tree protection for a specific tree. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I am identifying a tree here. I hope that's okay. I would like to ask a very simple supplementary question. And as Councillor Hollingsworth has mentioned already, he quite likes yes or no answers. So this only requires a yes or no answer. Would the Cabinet member be content for a TPO to be placed on this prominent and much loved tree if the planning inspector for the SODC local plan gives the go ahead for the major development in the field at the bottom of Delbush Avenue, immediately adjacent to this tree?
I think that I made clear in my answer that the decision-making process here is not one that relies on individual councillors interfering with what is effectively like a quasi-judicial process, one laid out in law. So it's not for me or any other councillor to be issuing TPOs or otherwise.
Thank you for your response. Question 16, Councillor Wolfe to Councillor Upton, cycling without age group.
Thank you. No supplementary.
Thank you. Question 17 from Councillor Wolfe to Councillor Upton, active travel funding tranche 2. Any supplementary?
I don't have a supplementary, Lord Mayor, no.
Thank you very much. 18, Councillor Wade to Councillor Upton, reintroducing drug-related deaths. Reducing, sorry, not reintroducing. Reducing, that would have been the opposite, I think. Reducing drug-related deaths. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor, thank you. Thank you very much for your response, Councillor Upton. I take your point about public health needing to be involved here, and I've emailed Ansar Azar, who is the new relatively new public health director for Oxfordshire, and I'm waiting to hear from him about drug consumption rooms. But looking at the Glasgow experience and what we've learnt from that, the response of the Home Office is the key to this, not public health locally. That's why, as a local authority, we need to be lobbying the Home Office. Can I ask you again whether you would consider doing this? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Yes, I read the report that the speaker who's coming to talk to us later today mentions in his address. So I was going to flesh out my answer slightly to him, having drug consumption rooms, and in my role on the Oxfordshire Health and Wellbeing Board, I think it's something I can raise there to see whether, and I think that perhaps is a more appropriate forum to then from there go on to lobby government. I hope that's okay.
Thank you very much for that answer. Question 19 from me to Councillor Upton, better local COVID-19 data. Thank you for your answer. I do have a supplementary, just an update, because I was listening, I think on Radio 4, some council said they had postcode data now from government. Is that data that we have?
Oh, I'm not sure. I actually spoke to the team this afternoon to get an update. Things are moving very quickly at the moment. I think the government were going to give us that data, but then they appear to have fallen foul of doing a GDPR audit on the data, so may not be able to give it to us after all immediately. It's a very fast-moving situation at the moment, Craig, and if you like, I will let you know as soon as we get a definite answer about whether we're going to have that postcode level data.
Thank you. I'm sure that would be of interest to all councillors if you could circulate the response. Thank you. Question 20, Councillor Goddard to Councillor Upton, LGBTQ citizens access to health services. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, if I may, my Lord Mayor. Just say it's good to hear about the work being done with younger LGBTQ people, but does the council recognise there's work to be done to improve the relationship between health service providers and LGBTQ adults as well? are there any initiatives which aim to support that effort in the same way as the Youth Ambition programme aims to support such efforts for younger LGBTQ people?
I don't know the answer to that offhand. What I will say is that I've written to the chief executive of both of our local NHS trusts on the specific issue of conversion therapy, just to confirm that, as I'm surely could they, because I've seen that Norfolk and Suffolk NHS Trust actually have a statement on their website laying that out very specifically. And I've asked them both to consider putting that onto their websites as well to make it clear what their position is. But
thank you for that.
That's all I can give you at the moment.
We have a question 21 as well. Councillor Goddard to Councillor Tidball, LGBTQ rights. Do you have a supplementary?
If I may, my Lord Mayor, yes. The measures that Councillor Tidball describes are existing measures, very welcome, and there's plenty to be proud of in them, the Queering Spires exhibition and so on. Obviously, you need to fight prejudice all year round, and to do so well beyond simply the confines of the town hall. And in doing so, you have to engage not just with LGBTQ organisations, but with all the council partners, public, private, voluntary sector, and so on. I wondered what efforts City Council is making to engage with its partners across the board to encourage inclusive practice.
Yep. Councillor Tidball.
Thank you. So I just want to start by saying that I have written to the Women and Equalities Minister, Liz Truss, to raise my concerns about the shocking situation that we now find ourselves in. And that is government is indeed one partner who we must engage to take action on these very important issues. We are in the process of developing our equality review at the moment. There will be a strand on LGBTQI issues, and as part of that strand, whilst we're developing themes that we can take to the public, we are going to have sessions with a number of partners, but also with groups on the ground. There will be a specific stakeholder group or reaching out to stakeholders across charities and other organisations in the city on LGBTQI issues, and obviously members of that community, and that's being drawn up by officer colleagues at the moment. We're looking and hoping that that will happen in around September time, so that there is both a clear connection and challenge to government on this area, but also a grassroots piece of work so that we understand the issues facing people in our city. So more on that soon. It's an issue which I also raise regularly in my role on the Children's Trust, and have done so a number of those sessions. I think it's important to bring the questions of equality issues to every, if not all, report that comes before us, and I certainly do and raise these questions as well with groups and other organisations that I interact with as part of my cabinet role.
Thanks very much, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Question 22, Councillor Gaunt to Councillor Brown, predetermining potential planning matters. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, if I may, please, Lord Mayor, just to try and get a direct answer to the question at the end of the original question, just to be absolutely clear that this question has no bearing whatever on the view expressed in the letter I referred to about the issue of roads must fall or wider issues, but simply around the wisdom of councillors signing and thereby removing themselves from their proper role in actually deciding as councillors the outcome of any application on it. And in addition to that, because there were so many people who did that, putting a considerable extra burden on their colleagues on council. Does the leader agree with me that that was unwise?
Councillor Brown.
Well, I think I would refer Andrew back to my response, which I think did address his question, and that is that every councillor has to make up their own mind about whether they need to express a view on a particular issue, or whether they needs to keep their powder dry in case they might need to determine a planning application. And that is a matter for individuals to consider. And sometimes on important issues, it is very important that we speak out. So I think, you know, it's something he'd have to ask each individual councillor about their views on that. And I think people have expressed their views. So I'm grateful to all those people who have not yet expressed a view and therefore are able to determine any future planning applications that come to us. But I think it's perfectly reasonable that, for instance, I wrote to Oriel College asking them to submit a planning application and made it clear that that would be something that the council would welcome. And equally, I think it's understandable that many people expressed a view that they thought that the statue ought to be removed. That, of course, means they cannot determine the planning application, but it's not a surprising state of affairs in a council which has many times expressed its view that we must be an anti-racist city and to tackle racism in all its forms.
Thank you very much. Final question, Councillor Gant, Councillor Brown, again, principles for reorganising local government. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, and I'll try and be quick. Yes, just to say thank you very much for the answer. And I fully appreciate, of course, that what we're looking at here is something that is, you know, if it happens at all, will be a package that is delivered to us by government. However, you know, the process does allow us to say what we would like to be in it. So could I just ask the leader two very straight questions? The last two bullet points, does she agree with me that ideally it should include a different voting system, preferably STV, and a voting age of 16?
Neither of those is going to be any part of this package, and I therefore don't think it's actually for us to have a form a particular view on this. I think there will be differing views on certainly the first part around the council chamber. I think actually the council has agreed a policy previously that we are in support of lowering the voting age to 16, but I don't for a moment believe that's going to be part of the government's offer to us. My main aim in all of this is to ensure that the city has a proper voice in any future democratic arrangements, and I think it's really important that we make sure that it does.
Thank you very much. That's the final question, and we're only 7 minutes after 6 o'clock, so we said we would have public addresses at around or nearly after 6, and we are now there. So Jennifer, would you like to sort of announce when people have been admitted into the Zoom meeting and can speak, and then I'll happily call them. We have number one is Colin Aldridge.
Yes, I believe Colin Aldridge is ready to speak to you.
Colin Aldridge, thank you very much for attending council. You have up to 5 minutes to speak, so please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm here today to ask you to consider the concept of drug consumption rooms. Amid a wartime panic, the government imposed the Defence of the Realm Act, which banned the sale of cocaine, opium and cannabis without prescription to troops. Before this time, these drugs were readily available in the 1800s. The laudanum could be readily available without prescription. It is used famously advocated by Shelley, Byron, Wordsworth Keats. Queen Victoria was said to have used opium, and Britain fought twice the Chinese for control of opium trade during the Opium Wars. The British Empire was in fact the biggest drug dealer. I do not want you to consider legalising drugs in their entirety, but a small change to the present law to allow drug consumption rooms. Drug consumption rooms have the ability to reach and maintain contact with high-risk drug users who are not readily or willing to stop using drugs. The evidence base contradicts concerns that such facilities encourage drug use, delay treatment treat or aggravate problems arising from local drug markets, finding instead that both the user and the community stand to benefit. As frontline low-threshold services, drug consumption rooms are often among the first to gain insight into the new drug use patterns and thus They also have a role to play in the early identification of new and emerging trends among high-risk population using their services. The emergence of new forms of injectable stimulants, including new psychoactive substances, have resulted in potentially increased risk for drug users. And this is part of the context of the political discussion in some European countries about the introduction of drug consumption rooms. This clear and concise presentation of the evidence suggests that the benefit of drug consumption rooms may include improvements in safe, hygienic drug use, especially among regular clients, increase access to health and social services, reduced public drug use and associated nuisance. Previous Home Secretaries, when responding to the advice of the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs, have all reiterated that the majority of public opinion is against reforming the current stance on prohibition. However, a poll commissioned on the 10th of July 2010 by the Liberal Democrats found that when the definitions of free regulatory options were given to members of the public instead of simply asking, do you think drugs should be legalized, the majority in fact supported new regulatory control. As of April 2018, there were 90 drug consumption rooms in Denmark, France, Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Switzerland. Pragmatic solutions have led to the rewarding results in Portugal. After decriminalising possession and consumption of drugs in 2001, the country has seen drug-related deaths reduced to 3 per million. There are 3,750 deaths relating to drug poisoning in England and Wales in 2017, a rate of 66.1 deaths per 1 million population. And similar levels are seen in 2016. The public recognised DCRs are not a complete answer to drug use and but is a step in the right direction. I would urge you to talk to the residents you represent, listen to what they say, and make the decision to talk to all the MPs to talk to their colleagues in Parliament. DCRs will happen, just depends when. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin Aldridge. I think Councillor Upton's going to respond.
Yeah, Colin, thank you very much indeed for coming to us with this balanced, pragmatic address on the idea of drug consumption rooms. I read the briefing that you mentioned in it from the European Union's Drug Misuse Monitoring Centre, which was really interesting. As you've mentioned, it outlines evidence that contradicts many of the worries that people have about introducing them and outlines the benefits, some of which I had not even thought of before. I mean, alongside the kind of obvious ones of fewer overdose deaths, not sharing dirty needles, getting vulnerable people somewhere where they might be much more likely to access health and social services, and reducing the awful problem of discarded needles that some our street ambassadors are having to deal with every day. My day job is I'm a neuroscientist, and speaking as a neuroscientist, I know something about the effects that addictive drugs can have on brain function. And once control of dopamine release at the synapses involved in reward circuits of the brain has become dysregulated, it is very hard to fix. Drug addicts need help, and I can see that consumption rooms are a way of keeping them safe and increasing the likelihood of them getting help. So I'm afraid it's beyond the remit of the City Council to commission a drug consumption room, but I do sit on the Health and Wellbeing Board for Oxfordshire, the county has the responsibility for public health. So I will raise it there because I think this is something we really should look at. And thank you very much for bringing this evidence to our attention. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Colin. Now we move to Peter Thompson. Peter Thompson, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry for the delay.
That's okay.
I'm from Oxford School of English, and I wanted to speak about the expanded retail discount scheme and language school. Oxford School of English and the city's other dozen or so similar schools are a vital part of Oxford's local economy. Our school alone provides an income to some 70 staff and 250 host families, and annually contributes almost £3 million to the city's economy. The annual value to the British economy of our sector as a whole is 1.4 billion. Now, since March, our income has been zero and is unlikely to recover to any degree until Easter next year. We need your help to reach that point. As you know, Oxford City Council has decided that English language schools are not eligible for the expanded retail discount scheme. The guidance issued by the government sets out broad categories of businesses that are eligible and lists examples. However, the guidance also states that this list, and I quote, is not intended to be exhaustive. Authorities should determine for themselves whether properties are broadly similar in nature, and if so, to consider them eligible for the relief. In contrast to Oxford City Council, at least 17 other local authorities have interpreted the guidance to conclude that English language schools do indeed meet the criteria, and have therefore granted the relief to language schools in their areas. These 17 authorities include Brighton City Council, which sought specific advice directly from the government. As a result, in late May, the council announced that they would indeed include their own language schools in the rates relief scheme. The council explained that they had defined a test of eligibility, saying that this test will evidence to government that we have fully considered their requirements before making an award. Oxford City Council has said that English language schools are educational and the tourism element is a benefit derived from their primary function. With respect, the council is entirely wrong. It is surely evident to all Oxford residents that the prime reason for the majority of students attending courses at English language schools is not to study English, but to engage in a form of tourism. At Easter and in the summer, this is an inescapable fact of our city centre, as groups of these teenage tourists throng the streets and public spaces. These young people are here to experience British life, to participate in British customs, and to live with British people. Most are here just for 2 or 3 weeks, but they may stay for as little as 5 days. They are very evidently tourists. So on behalf of our sector's 200 Oxford staff, and of the 1,000 or so host families whose income is threatened, and of the many thousands of residents who benefit in other ways, I urge councillors to follow the lead of your colleagues in Brighton, to seek guidance from them if necessary, and further guidance from the government if appropriate, and to grant us the rates relief our schools so desperately need.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And I believe Councillor Turner is going to respond.
Craig, I will do so. I've just seen in the chat that Alex Hollingsworth is seeking some advice on declaring an interest. And I suspect if there's a particular sort of interest, then he might need to duck out of the Zoom meeting for a moment. So should we just go to Anita as head of legal to respond to that?
I don't think we're voting or anything, but maybe so I wouldn't have thought that. But Anita, can you give any advice on whether Alex needs to?
Yes, Lord Mayor, I would agree that there isn't an interest there, but if Councillor Hollingsworth wants to put on record his position, and he's not taking any vote or anything in relation to it.
No, I do not want to put on record my position. I just wanted to ask.
Okay.
So there's no interest to declare. No interest to declare.
No interest to declare. That's fine. Thank you. We've made that clear.
Okay.
Councillor Turner, to continue.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, and sorry about that. So, I mean, first of all, Mr. Thompson, thanks very much indeed for sharing
these points. I mean, I very much appreciate what you say and feel for everyone working in the sector. And I think as a council, we want to do what we can to help. These issues have been raised with me a number of times, and I've discussed them at length with officers. And you know, my challenge, to be completely candid, my challenge to officers has been: have we got any discretion we can apply here so that such relief can be granted? Officers have been clear with me that there isn't any such discretion, and that granting reliefs in this way wouldn't be in line with the guidance. So what we then did was we wrote, the leader wrote to the minister, actually asking the ministers to change the rules and to be clear. Unfortunately, we haven't had a reply to that letter. But just to be clear, the reason why we put that case to ministers is there's absolutely no rationale for helping one sector of the economy which is gravely affected by the implosion of people coming to this country for tourist purposes, as language students, or whatever their purpose might be, but not another. The logic of government policy in granting the reliefs should surely point to this sector being included. I'm very happy on the basis of tonight's address to go back to officers to encourage them to look at the decisions made by Bryson, and if officers are satisfied that that's legally robust, then I'm sure we'd look to go down the same road. But I have to caution, it's been looked at carefully, and so far officers feel that the government's regulations don't allow those payments to be made. But you know, whether it is by lobbying national government for a change, whether it's by doing making a change locally, be assured that we will do what we can.
Thank you for that response. Next, we have an address by Tanagra Jabu Nala Hartley, Oxford Living Wage. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
You can indeed. You have 5 minutes to make your case.
Good evening, all. As chair of the Oxford Living Wage campaign, I would like to thank the council, the Oxford City Council, for their continued support we have for the Oxford Living Wage. We would like the council to continue to support the campaign, especially as we face economic challenges from COVID-19. Oxford communities must continue to be supported in their plight. The gig economy has devastated workers through precarious contracts, which have eroded decent wages. We must continue our efforts to build solidarities and strengthen our resolves, especially as COVID-19 crisis is not over. As chair of the campaign, I would like to place on record our thanks to Oxford City Council for its continued work on the Oxford Living Wage, and to use this opportunity to invite the council to reaffirm its commitment to paying and promoting the Oxford Living Wage. I would also like to take this opportunity to ask all councillors present to take up the cause of the Oxford Living Wage, to join the campaign, and to argue for the living wage in their wards. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that address. I think we have Councillor Brown wishing to respond.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Jabu, for your statement and your thanks. I would certainly be very happy to make it absolutely clear that the council remains firmly behind the idea of an Oxford Living Wage, both for our own employees, but also importantly for other employees across the city. And I think it is an important point at which to make it clear that it is really important that workers in our city are paid a decent rate of pay, because if we're going to have, if our economy locally is going to recover, then people need to have some disposable income to invest in it, and that is crucial. So it is a virtuous circle. Paying people properly means that they have money to invest in other local businesses, and that is the argument that we have continued to make very vociferously as a city council, and this relates in many ways to a report that I'm going to bringing to the council later on about the work that we do with the LEP, and as leader of the council, I'm a city I'm appointed to the local economic partnership, and we've worked very hard, or I've worked very hard as a director of that organisation, to get the idea of an inclusive economy across that particular organisation and indeed the Growth Board. And I'm pleased to say that the work that we have done with both of those organisations to get the idea of an inclusive economy up foremost in people's minds has really begun to sort of hit home and is now very much part of the thinking of those organisations, and is being written into the work that they do, because it is very important that we make sure that out of this pandemic we try and tackle some of the inequalities in our city and make sure that they're not further reinforced by the outcomes that sadly we extend. So thank you very much for raising the issue. It definitely remains one of our priorities to make sure that as many organisations as possible across our city are paying the Oxford Living Wage.
Thank you for that response. Next we have an address from Xin Yun Yang.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. And hi, everyone. My name is Xin Yong. I'm very glad to have the opportunity today to really express my support on the motion of twinning Oxford with the Taiwanese city. And I was from Taiwan, and I moved to the UK in 2014 after finishing my PhD training. And I started as a postdoctoral researcher in Oxford University and became the founder of the pharmaceutical company, mainly based in Oxford. It has been a most incredible journey for me, and I'm very delighted to be able to devote myself in the growth of the industry in the UK, especially with all the training and the experience education I received from Taiwan. And what I have seen and learned from the time being in Oxford is this greatest environment with the elements of different cultures and the perspectives. And this has in turn driven the success of my research and also led to the £40 million investment to our company. So what I can foresee the benefit from this motion is to bring more Taiwanese talents to Oxford and to help the growth of the city with more understanding of our culture. So I truly believe the value of what we call Taiwanese experience and how much it could bring to the UK, no matter it's in policy and in economy. And there has been many cases showing our contributions in no matter human rights, technology, and the global health. Especially you might heard about our recent success in managing the outbreak of COVID-19. So I truly believe the decision to twin Oxford City with the city in Taiwan will create the more formal channel with the mutual benefits between the Taiwanese and the British people. So therefore, I sincerely support this motion, and I'm very happy to see its forthcoming in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your address. Councillor Brown, I think you'll wish to respond.
I just wanted to check that Councillor Clarkson wasn't expecting to respond. No, okay, fine. In which case I will happily respond on behalf of the council. First of all, thank you very much for your address. And I would like to say that our council is really proud of the international links and the large number of citizens from overseas that we have in our city. It's something that we've always really welcomed, and we are always looking at different ways of cementing those friendships with both cities overseas and indeed populations within our own city. We will be debating a motion later on the agenda, which I suspect you're aware of. Excuse me. I think one of the things that we would be seeking to do in that debate is to emphasise the importance of friendship links leading ultimately to a formal twinning link. And certainly our most successful twinning links have been based on long-standing friendship links that have built up over time. The city has limited resources when it comes to actually supporting formal twinning arrangements, and I think it is quite important that people understand that, because a lot of the doing of the friendship links has to be done by citizens within our city, and indeed with whichever city we are twinning or having friendship links with. So it is very much worth exploring. It's something that we'd be happy to be supporting that work, but we will come on to debate it more fully later on the agenda. Thank you very much for coming to address us today.
Yes, thank you. And the final speaker we have is David Madden. Are you there, David Madden?
I am indeed. Lord Mayor, councillors, thank you for agreeing to address your meeting today. My reason for requesting to speak is the growing level of concern at the accumulating impact of developments on the conservation area, the environment and the community, now and future. The North Oxford Victorian suburb conservation area is a very important part of the history and heritage of Oxford. It was preserved for a purpose. When it's gone, it's gone. There is no way back. You, the council, are the current custodians or guardians of the conservation area. Please honour that trust. To allow the piecemeal destruction of the area would be an abuse of authority and process. Much the same applies to the environment. You have declared a climate emergency. So far, that is merely words. It needs action to mean something. Again, you are the custodians. We long ago reached the stage when we should stop destruction. We need sustainability and regeneration. We look to you to take a lead. At present, the wide range of climate-related issues is not being addressed. The community is awaiting signs that you listen and engage, respond to reasoned concerns and criticisms, and act as our champion. And above all, please do not fall into avoidable mistakes and setting bad precedents. Developers everywhere are looking for signs of weakness and exploitable opportunities. A number of us have tried to engage with council officers and councillors on development issues, but with the exception of some specific councillors, we have not felt listened to. Oxford is changing. It has a huge pipeline of development projects ahead. These need to be considered holistically and strategically. These points may be rather general in tone, but they're important. I have 4 more specific suggestions for the meeting today. Planning committees have their role, but that does not absolve the council of responsibilities or the right of overview or oversight. Might senior councillors involve themselves more in the work of the committees, A, to check that nothing is amiss, and B, to sniff out potential for justified objections. Secondly, there is a widespread view that planning officers can become, because of their close long-term association with projects, the mouthpieces of developers. This is bad for local democracy, and the close relationship means that developers can exert pressure. The planners need to maintain independent scrutiny and be prepared to listen to objections as well, so that they can advise councillors wisely. Could they balance their apportionment of time and engage with the community as planning goes forward? Thirdly, more specifically, an element of good design included in planning rules is acceptability to the local community. At present, there is occasional engagement with the residents only through the developers and on their terms. This is surely not acceptable. Is it not possible to build consultation with the community on questions of design directly into the planning process? Lastly, often there will be competing views, e.g. on difficult, loaded, but absolutely essential issues like biodiversity. These have to be resolved, not just left hanging in the air. There can quite easily be independent resolution. Could officers engage more with known experts and not just with the developers? And one final overarching point, public confidence in processes of planning and development have to be preserved. This is essential. They affect the lives, health and livelihoods of everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your address and for keeping within time. Councillor Hollingsworth, I think you were going to respond.
Yeah, I'll do a brief verbal response now, just to pick up on a number of the points, and then a more detailed written response. The first point I wanted to make relates to the second of the 4 specific suggestions. it's an elegantly worded suggestion, but I think it is one that I find quite worrying. And I was also asked by Councillor Gant to raise this issue. He feels very much the same as me. In effect, it's using the opportunity of this public petition to suggest, rather than accuse, the council's planning officers of being biased in favour of developers. My long experience as a councillor on this council, and indeed talking to planning officers in other councils, is that that is something which is almost never true of planning officers, and is certainly not true of the planning officers of this council. It's an unfortunate slur on their professionalism, and one that I regret is made in this way. More broadly, I think what the petition suggests is the struggle that many of us have with the confines of the planning system as laid down in law. I think when I do planning training for other councils, one of the first things that one needs to get across to new councillors is that the planning system is essentially like a quasi-judicial process, and its starting point is that development should go ahead unless there is a specific reason why it shouldn't. That presumption in favour is something that is not widely understood, and nor should it be. It's something laid down in the National Planning Policy Framework, and indeed has been laid down in all planning law since 1947. But the gargantuan majority of the population do not spend their time engaging with the detail of planning law. So I think there is probably a communications issue here on this council and others to help try and explain that. But it is something that is explained at all planning meetings. And I think those of us who have sat on planning meetings either now or in the past will be aware that it is a difficult message to convey, because it's one that sort of flies against the expectations that many people have. And so addressing some of those other concerns, the suggestion that senior councillors, I suppose the leader of the council or whatever, should interfere with the planning committees, that would leave the council wide open to challenge and judicial review. It would in effect be political interference in the working of the planning committee, and entirely inappropriate. And that's the consequence of the planning system. Councillors must leave their political beliefs behind them when they enter a planning committee. And similarly, on the issue of design and consultation with the community, the council does its best to consult with the community, but the rules under which consultation takes place are those laid down by the government, which does not require developers to go beyond legal minimums. So good developers do, less good developers do not. I can see the Lord Mayor looking impatient, so I think I've probably come to the end of my time. So I'll wind up there and provide an additional written response, but I do want that message about the council's planning officers on the record of this meeting, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. I was only shifting because Councillor Gant wants to raise a point of order, I suspect because he was named and views ascribed to him. So Councillor Gant, could you be brief, please?
Yes, well spotted, Lord Mayor. Yes, indeed. Just to say, I did indeed correspond with Councillor Hollingsworth this afternoon, but I do want to make it clear that I began my message to Councillor Hollingsworth saying how much I admire and value the huge energy and commitment of people like our speaker this afternoon in engaging with the planning process. And it's very clear, certainly in my part of Oxford, the huge benefits that brings, not least in the development of the local plan, which covers both my ward and the ward which contains the recent planning application that no doubt he is thinking of.
Thank you.
If I may, just to say that also Ms Madden is of course perfectly entitled to expect that councillors on planning committees will read all submissions, and I hope that they do so. But finally, I did just want to make it clear that I was specifically raising the statement that planning officers can become the mouthpiece of developers. There's a long-standing and very valuable convention that officers are not able to answer criticism of that kind, and that councillors should essentially defend them from them. And that was the point I wanted to make. So my thanks to Alex for repeating it.
Thank you very much. So that's all for item 11. Thank you very much for all those who gave public addresses and to members who responded. I think that was a good suite of public addresses, some very useful, interesting stuff. So we're moving on to item 12, the Outside Organisations Committee Chair Reports, and we have one on behalf of Leader of Council about her position on the Oxfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. Would you like to introduce that report? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Again, this is a report just for noting, but as you'll know, we've been trying to make sure that for the outside bodies that we have representation on, we keep council informed about what their representatives are doing, and this is one such report. So by virtue of being leader of the council, I am automatically appointed as a director of the Oxfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership, a role that is unremunerated, you'll be pleased to hear. So I have been undertaking that position for a couple of years now. It's an interesting role because the Local Enterprise Partnership is the recipient of considerable government grant for the purpose of making sure that our economy locally grows. That is obviously a more challenging landscape than it was 6 months ago. We had actually an away day just shortly before the pandemic came upon us, at which I was able to raise the prospect of a pandemic coming down the line. And I think at the time people thought that I was being a little bit gloomy in raising that as a potential issue, but in fact I think some of the conversation we had around those issues was useful in view of what was coming down the line. So the report sets out some of the important work that the LEP does, including some of the key geographical aspects that will be of greatest interest to us in the city, including the West End Innovation Quarter and taking views on that. And obviously also the Oxford Science Park and supporting the work that we all here, I think, support around the Cowley branch line. But I think that one of the things that people will be particularly interested in is the work that is currently ongoing, which is set out in the addendum, because this report was due to come to a council meeting that was cancelled, but there is now an addendum to the report, which is about the work that we're currently doing on the LEP to try and make sure that we are doing everything we can to help our economy locally recover and to restore. And obviously one of the key things around that is making sure that there's suitable skills training for people who, through no fault of their own, find themselves out of work during the current recession. So I think that that will be an important piece of work that the LEP will continue to lead on. And we will take every opportunity we can to make sure that our views on an inclusive economy are fully part of the work that the LEP is doing around this, and indeed every other piece of work that it's doing. We had quite a lot of influence over the local industrial strategy, trying to make sure that that properly reflected our views around an inclusive economy and also a sustainable economy. And both of those things are now very much part of that strategy in a way that they weren't previously. I think I'll stop there, Lord Mayor, and take any questions if there are any.
Thank you. I have Councillor Wolf and I know Councillor Ganter, if that's still your hand up from last time. We'll start with Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the report, Susan. It was beautifully subtly written. It's actually a litany of woes of the results of leaving the EU, but very understated, I have to say. The point I wanted to raise was one that I noticed. I was very interested in the Gatsby guidelines for good career guidance. I'd not actually heard of those. And I was very struck reading through them by the absence of anything that suggested looking ahead to estimate not what the labour market says it wants at the moment, but what the labour market is going to need 10 years down the line. And I'm thinking, with restrictions on immigration coming up, skills shortages, severe skills shortage in the building industry, digitisation of the economy, and the climate emergency, I do find myself wondering whether the great Gatsby's car is heading for the car crash that features at the centre of that story.
Would you like to respond? Let me just take Councillor Gant, actually, I think, and then you can respond to both questions.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lord Mayor. Yes, I mean, Dick's already made the point I was going to make in paragraphs 10 to 12 of the report, talking about funding that has been provided from European funds and then has then generated match funding locally. And I just really wanted to ask the leader if she agrees with me that this just shows once again the mendacious lunacy of the entire Brexit project and the damage that it is already doing to our local economy. Just on a slightly broader point about, particularly about the fact sheet that comes at the end here. I mean, it's a very, persuasive document, but just in terms of tone, it barely mentions climate change. It barely mentions local communities. Their paragraph headed transparency says that they've held their last 2 board meetings in public. Well, yippee, there's no opportunity for members of the public to address the board or engage with it. And there is a sort of mood music around these strategic regional bodies, that they are something which, to use a phrase which the leader used earlier, is something that is being done to people. Could those considerations be factored into thinking about these bodies going forward?
Thank you. And maybe I'll add one short question before you answer, which is to do with broadband at the county level. I didn't see any mention of it, and I thought that was one of the work streams, was to look at better digital infrastructure. So maybe you could respond to that. Thanks.
Thank you all for your questions and points. I mean, I think there's always more that that could be properly delegated to different bodies locally that would allow us to actually work more effectively with our local economies, and I would say that the work that we do on skills locally is somewhat hamstrung by the lack of ability to do the kind of work that Dick was talking about in a really effective way. And it's something that I've lobbied government ministers and civil servants about continuously ever since I became a member of the LEP, because I think that it became very apparent to me that we don't really have the tools that we need in order to work with local businesses and people to make sure that the right skills training is available. I don't think that's ever been more important than it is now. So that's one of the things that we've been trying to work up in terms of bids as well, trying to make sure that we're putting that forward. In terms of some of the other issues, I mean, I think what I would say is that, of course, the LEP's not perfect in the way that it operates, but I think we clearly do have some democratic oversight of the LEP. I mean, I'm talking to you now as a democratically elected person who has been appointed on your behalf onto that body, and I'm sort of talking to you about it. And it's certainly open to people to discuss with me issues that they would want me to raise at that body. That feels to me considerably better than having these decisions taken by some faceless bureaucrat, in Whitehall, or somebody operating as a directly elected mayor for an entire region, making these decisions without any interference or influence or any consultation, indeed, with everybody locally. So I think there are some advantages to the current system. But yes, clearly there is more that we could do to make this body even more accountable, or to have some of these decisions taken in a different way, if that were open to us. I don't think it is open to us currently, so I'm very happy to try and work hard to make sure that the views of this council and our city are heard in the LEP. And I think we've done quite a lot to make sure that within the confines of the work that they do, our key issues around sustainability and inclusivity are being heard and are being taken on board. I take on board your points, Lord Mayor, about the fact that the sort of fact sheet doesn't necessarily cover those, and I will take that back to the LEP and ask them if they could look at making sure that those are a little higher up in that fact sheet, because I do think we have made some real changes in terms of the thinking of the LEP more generally, but clearly it hasn't quite made it through to that fact sheet. So that's something I'd be very happy to take away.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Gann, is that another question, your hand up, or is that just your hand still up from last time?
No, that's just not taking it down. I'll do it now.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I think we've finished item 12. That report was for noting, so thank you very much, Councillor Brown. And now over to you, Councillor Gant, for Scrutiny Committee update report, item 13.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Sorry, I feel I've talked far too much in this meeting. I apologise. Just to draw colleagues' attention to this report, and once again, I must begin by thanking and paying tribute to the work of our excellent officers, not least during the challenging circumstances that we have found ourselves in. Partly for that reason, this report covers a lot of meetings going pretty much back to the beginning of the year, the last 3 of which have been since the current pandemic. So I'll just sort of top and tail them. It's all in front of you. The ones, the most recent ones, for obvious reasons, tended to deal with sort of technical or to some extent emergency matters rather than strategic matters going forward. Going back to the beginning of March, before the lockdown began, we looked at things which the committee has taken an interest in over a period of time, including the gender pay gap, performance monitoring and customer experience. And I'd like to thank all my colleagues on the committee, in particular, cabinet members who've always attended very willingly, often late into the evening, and officers as well. I won't mention the panels or the review groups because I wasn't on any of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any points to raise, questions on item 13? Any of the chairs of those panels or review groups wish to add anything? Okay, a deafening silence. So thank you very much for that report, Councillor Gant. It's for noting, so Council notes it and thanks you and committee members. So we're on to item 14 now. So I said around before item 14 we would take a 15-minute break. I thought that'd be about 7 o'clock. We're about 8 minutes to 7. So if we reconvene at 7:10 before we deal with item 14, which is the motions, gives people about 15-minute break. And please do not log out. Stay online, turn your camera off and turn your microphone off. And I'll see you back again at 7:10. Thank you.
This is just to say that I'm withdrawing from the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Craig.
Hello.
Hi,
I'm
Mark.
back.
Hi,
I think
Ros.
we're
Craig.
still on YouTube, so I've asked in the chat whether people think 15-minute break is too much or too little. I think it very much depends on their caring responsibilities, but just interested in your view.
I don't care.
Well,
I don't care. Good evening, all.
good evening. I don't know who that is that's speaking.
Councillor John Tanner.
We are still
John.
live.
We're still live, yes. So
We are
just
still
remind
live.
people we're still live. But we've got 2 minutes and then we'll be back on. I noticed we've lost a couple of councillors. Some have logged out.
Lord Mayor, Councillor Harris and Councillor Sim have left the meeting.
Yes, thank you. I think we need to put that on record, which you've done. Thank you very much. I think procedurally it's quite difficult to handle a break in an online meeting.
You're doing very well, Lord Mayor.
Yeah.
That's so kind.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think Councillor Chapman has asked when the meeting's going to end, just for people coming back in. So we have 60 minutes which is the maximum time we can take for motions, which is item 14, and then that's our last item. So the answer is exactly, unless someone moves to suspend standing orders, 1 hour from when we reconvene, which is now.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I shall tell the other half to get the food on then, ready for an hour's time.
Yeah.
For supper. Thank you.
Great. So Jennifer, do we have everyone back? Well,
If people could indicate that they are definitely back.
I clearly said 10 past. I see
I am.
Empty cameras.
Yep, we are very nearly all back.
Great. Well, let's push ahead anyway. So thank you very much. I'm interested in your views on whether 15-minute break was too little or too long. I think I've got a variety of views. So we have the first motion, item 14, is twinning with a locality on the island of Taiwan, which is proposed by Councillor Goddard, seconded by Councillor Wade, and an amendment proposed by Councillor Clarkson. So Councillor Goddard, you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. And I'd like to thank also Dr. Yen for his excellent address earlier on. Oxford, of course, should be very grateful for our existing twin towns and sister cities. These partnerships, as I know very well, have enriched lives in Oxford for decades now. However, we live in a world where more people live in the Far East than in the rest of the world put together. And it's therefore a striking absence that none of Oxford's twin cities are in that region. Fortunately, we have a chance to rectify that absence. The Taiwan representative offices in the UK have indicated their willingness to help Oxford find a twin city in Taiwan. And I can honestly say that there's nowhere in the world I'd be prouder to see Oxford forge new links with. Councillors may not know, history has dealt the people of Taiwan a difficult hand. They emerged from World War II having been brutalised by occupation by the Japanese Empire, which, among other things, dropped nerve gas on the island's Aboriginal population. Control of the island then passed to a military regime that executed or imprisoned 140,000 people. Throughout that time, Mao was trying to bring the island under his totalitarian rule. Even to this day, the people of Taiwan exist in a diplomatic black hole. For example, the island's governing authorities can't even attend the World Health Assembly. Despite this, the people of Taiwan have flourished. In 1960, GDP per capita on the island was a sixth of what it was on this island. Yet today, average income in Taiwan is actually higher than in the UK. A democracy movement brought free elections, the rule of law, civil liberties to the island. In 2019, these democratic institutions voted to make Taiwan the first jurisdiction in Asia to recognise same-sex marriages. Not content with this achievement, the islands become host to one of the boldest experiments in using technology to promote civic participation. The ideas that arose from this, such as the world's first app for distributing face masks, contributed to Taiwan having a world-leading response to coronavirus, which throughout the entire duration of the pandemic has kept fatalities in single figures. I'm therefore sure Oxford will have a lot to learn from a Taiwanese city. We also have a chance to help the Taiwanese people out of their isolation without undermining the People's Republic of China. While most countries, including the UK, don't have government-to-government relationships with the Taiwan authorities, locality-to-locality relationships sidestep Taiwan's tangled diplomatic positions. That's why plenty of cities around the world have already forged links in Taiwan. Even Shanghai and Taipei have enjoyed 10 years of friendly city-to-city exchanges. The UK, to be honest, is lagging in that regard, and Oxford should lead the way in rectifying that. To do that would be to take a stand for our shared values with the people of Taiwan. In a speech in 1992, the late dictator of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, suggested this: what Asians value may not necessarily be what Americans or Europeans value. Westerners value the freedoms and liberties of the individual. As an Asian of Chinese cultural background, my values are for a government which is honest, effective, and efficient. Taiwan shows that he was wrong. Taiwan shows that democracy, freedom, and liberty can coexist with honest, effective, and efficient government in Asia as much as anywhere. And if we got nothing from twinning with a Taiwanese city, apart from being shown afresh how important is what we're doing here tonight, making decisions democratically, then I say that would be more than enough. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much for that proposed motion. Councillor Wade, do you wish to speak now, or we thought you're right?
I think I'd like to speak now, Lord Mayor, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Right. Unfortunately, we live in a world where the first instincts of most politicians is to push nations apart and divide people. In that context, building bridges across borders is vital. This is not just a job for foreign ministers, ambassadors, and other professionals. Town twinning is about the people of Oxford building those links too. Oxford citizens have fundraised for coronavirus-hit communities in Leon, exchanged Christmas decorations with children in Perm, enjoyed a fire show from Grenoble, played football against teams from Bonn, and celebrated the value of peace and partnership with friends from all our twin towns and cities. I come from a family that treated Chiang Kai-shek as a hero. As a small child, his was the first foreign name that I knew, because he was viewed in our family as just an extraordinary person who had done so much in such a difficult situation. That would have been in 48, 49. I go back that far and I remember it well. We should seize this opportunity to build friendships in Taiwan. That is partly because it represents an economic opportunity, and we shouldn't be shy about that. Coronavirus means times will be tough in this city as in the rest of the UK. We haven't dealt with the virus as we should have done. So we need to be on the lookout for international collaborations which can help us create jobs locally. Taiwan is an obvious place to look for these collaborations. This is in line with the LIS, Oxford's local industrial strategy, which wants us to be a pioneer for transformational technologies and sectors. This is an obvious way to move in that direction. Councillor Goddard has already mentioned that Taiwan is a powerhouse for growth. To give just one example, iPhones are designed by Apple, but they are actually built by two other companies, and they're both in Taiwan. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the bilateral trade between the UK and Taiwan is worth 6.6 billion a year. As Dr. Yen has testified just a few minutes ago to this council, Oxford and Taiwan both have strengths in high-tech areas like electronics, automobiles, pharmaceuticals, so match-up is natural. The UK is currently negotiating a free trade agreement with Taiwan. Let's build on that to make the kind of links that help bring its benefits to Oxford, not just to the UK generally, but to our city. However, town twinning is not just about financial riches, and I would be selling twinning short if I said that it was. It's also about culture. Taiwan has all sorts of important cultural benefits. It boasts an astonishing diversity. 95% of the population are Chinese, but there's another 5%, which is small in number, but actually very powerful, including the original people who were there before the Chinese moved in. It's a fascinating place and one that we need to get to know better. So, fine, I don't need to say any more at the moment. I hope that you will feel able to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have a proposed amendment from Councillor Clarkson, which you should be moving now. And if you have a seconder, please indicate.
Okay, I'll start. I'm not. I hope someone will come forward as a seconder, but I'll start now. I mean, Dr. Yen and Councillors Goddard and Wade have made a very eloquent case for linking with Taiwan. And I don't think there's anything that they have said that I disagree with. It's obviously a very impressive country, and there's a lot that Oxford could certainly gain from closer links. My amendments are addressed at the way we go about linking. With our links to date, they've very much been grassroots links, and they've been very much coming about through groups of people in Oxford linking with groups of people in a particular city that we feel that we have a lot in common with. So when Steve said the Taiwanese office will find a town for us, that set alarm bells ringing for me, because I think we need to find a town that has natural links with us and where we want to explore those at grassroots level, not just driven by councillors and officials. So while I very much would like us to take this forward and explore it, I think we should start by finding people in Oxford who want to initiate that, and for them to look at cities in Taiwan where we know that that would be of wide benefit to the communities in both those places. Liz mentioned some of the benefits that we already have from our twins. She mentioned the Rose Hill football team, a lot of whom had never left this country, and it was a great thing for them to go to Germany and to mix with German footballers and to learn from that. Those are the great benefits from twinning when it happens, and those are genuine friendship links. That's what I would like to see with a link with Taiwan. And while we should initiate it now, I think it should very much be a grassroots thing, not council to council, official to official. And that's why I've made my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tanner, is that your hand to second?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I'd like to second the amendment. There are so many places in the world that would like to twin with Oxford, and so many places that Oxford would like to twin with. We have now a long list that people can see as they come into Oxford on our placard as you enter the city. Twins from the Netherlands to the Urals. And that's great. And we've also got a twin in Nicaragua, but there are many parts of the world, Africa as well as Asia, where we don't have any twins yet. I think the right thing is to say well done to the people that want to start a twin with somewhere in Taiwan. Let's build up a friendship link first. And if that succeeds, and I wish it well, then that's the time for the council to give its official support. But I think we made an exception in the case of Wroclaw because coming out of the European Union, which is something we've always opposed in Oxford, we wanted to make a special statement about developing closer links with the rest of Europe and indeed a twin in Italy as well. But I think in this case, because the council has limited resources, we really can't devote them to trying to get a twin with Taiwan or anywhere else in China. You know, why not India, Indonesia, Africa? So where do you stop? So somewhere in North America, that would all be very nice. But until we have properly funded local government, I think this amendment strengthens the motion which has come before us this evening.
Thank you. So we're now having a debate on the amendment. So I have Councillor Malik and Councillor Ros Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I like to speak in a favor of the amendment, actually. Like John mentioned, Indonesia, another country. I can also mention Pakistan, where you still have plenty left by the colonial days, etc. routes. But I think it is a point where when you mentioned Wrocław, and I have the honor to go and sign the twinning because at the time Colin Cook couldn't travel because of his health issues. We needed to make, I think, a statement that time what was happening with the Brexit and how our city was. And I think as a responsible city councillors around the circle, we made the exception for Wrocław. But when you look at the Ramallah model, that shows how you actually
we have some echo, so I think it's Councillor Wade. Can you turn your microphone off? No, maybe it's someone else. Okay, continue, Councillor Malik. We'll battle through.
And Councillor Gotch.
Councillor Gotch apparently also has the microphone on.
Right. So basically, I think it's a process. Councillor Goddard and Councillor Wade put very eloquently their case, but I think is the way, rather than they found for us, I think those people have to make contact to us. And when they make contact to us, then you start this friendship link. And I think Ramallah takes nearly 10, 12 years or longer to create that. But I think Oxford is open to everyone to come and make all those links. And obviously, when all the similarities and the values we believe in and we share with the others, and then we'll go through. So I will support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And officers, are you able to mute people who are not speaking if there's some feedback? That would be appreciated. Councillor Wade.
Thank you very much. I didn't think I was next on the list, but I'm very happy to speak now if you like. There are already quite a lot of possibilities about cities that we might want to twin with, and the one that comes to mind is a town called Tan Shui, which is just north of the capital. It used to be a fishing village, and it's rather more than a fishing village now. It's a very extraordinary town. I haven't been there, sadly, but I've seen the pictures and I know what it's like. It also has a university, which we happen to have as well. In fact, we've got two of them. And I think that it would be fertile ground on which to actually base a really successful twin. And looking at our twinning website, which is a tremendous website, very enthusiastic, twinning enriches our city through cultural and business links. It's more important than ever that Oxford builds its own bridges to the world that we want to live in. This is a statement on our website, and so I'm disappointed to find a rather lukewarm response from Councillor Clarkson on this. I think we should seize this opportunity before somebody else grasps it, because Taiwan is a very exciting place, and it would be lovely to be in there being involved with it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have also Councillor Steve Goddard and Councillor Alex Hollingsworth. That's the only, and then we'll move to a vote on the amendment. Councillor Steve Goddard.
Thanks, my Lord Mayor. Clearly, in response to the amendment, I understand to some degree where Councillor Clarkson is coming from. However, as Dr. Yen has already made very clear, companies such as his bring significant investment. The amount of money that the city would be investing in a twinning would, I strongly suspect, be outweighed many times over by the advantages that the twinning would bring to our city, which of course is what this council is all about. In terms of urgency, in terms of making a special statement, as Councillor Tanner pointed out, the reason why we went ahead with Wrocław so quickly was the particular events surrounding Brexit. We needed to make a statement on that. Well, I don't know whether council colleagues have been keeping an eye on the news headlines in recent days, but it is very much the case that the Far East is, to put it mildly, in a state of turmoil. This seems to be an exactly correct time to be making a clear statement about the values this council holds in common with Taiwan, most obviously in that area. As Liz mentioned, in actual fact, since awareness of this motion got out there, so to speak, there have been a number of suggestions from people in Taiwan and elsewhere as to where would be very appropriate twin localities on that island. I really don't think we would have difficulty finding people willing to come forward and help us with that decision. And to be honest, governments around the world keep expecting people from Taiwan to settle for inferior, unofficial international links. We need Oxford, in fact, to offer them the real deal now, not to fob them off with the promise of jam tomorrow. So I'm afraid I can't support this particular amendment. We need to make a decision now to keep twinning right at the forefront of what this council does.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth. Then I'm going to move to a vote.
Sorry, were you taking me or not taking me, Lord Mayor?
Yes, no, I was taking you.
Okay, right. I shall be very brief so you can move quickly to the vote. I was leader of the council when we first had proposals to twin with Ramallah. The council at that time, with probably near universal support around the chamber, said that we supported the principle of those links being made official, but before they were made official, it was really important to build up the grassroots links. And when Ramallah became a twin city, those grassroots links have been developed over a considerable period, were much stronger for it. And I think that that's a sound principle to take. Twinning has always been about grassroots connections between people, not connections between companies and town halls or whatever. So I think I would urge people to apply the same principle we applied to Ramallah and support the amendment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ross-Smith, you have your hand up. I did say I wouldn't take any more on the amendment. Obviously, you're able to speak on the substantive.
Sorry, I'm not allowed to speak against the amendment then, Lord Mayor.
Well, I did say that I was drawing a line under the.
I had my hand up actually for a while, but never mind.
Well, sorry, it comes up in order, and yours was at the bottom. Sometimes if you put the hand down and up again, then you go down the list. So maybe that's
I think that's what happened actually. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, we're all learning. Okay, so we're moving to a vote, and what I'm going to suggest, Jennifer, if we try with the blue hands this time, otherwise we'll be here all night.
Lord Mayor, does Councillor Clarkson wish to respond before we move to the vote?
Councillor Clarkson, yes, you do have the right response. It's your amendment. Sorry.
Thanks. Just 2 points really. Thanks, Liz, for the suggestion of the particular town. I certainly think that's a really good start. And also like to add that I'm not lukewarm at all, but building on what Alex has just said, any links will be more committed and heartfelt if there's a body of people who have worked together and know each other in both towns beforehand. And finally, I'm surprised that a political party that has basically prided itself on being very grassroots is putting forward a motion that would start with something that's city to city or official to official. So I'd urge you all to support the amendment and go for something that we build up slowly as a grassroots movement, which we have done with our other successful twins. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, so we're now going to vote on the amendment. We're going to use our sort of raise hand function in the sort of participants window. And then Jennifer, if you could do a roll call at the end of anyone who you can't see the hand, if that's okay. So those in favour of the amendment, please raise the virtual hand.
You just bear with me.
Yeah, please do keep the hands up until Jennifer's finished.
There seems to be I've got until I can't raise my hand.
Well, Jennifer will come to you after Tom.
Okay.
Right, hang on. Okay. Right. If I call out those whom I haven't got a hand for, Councillor Landell-Mills.
I am voting against the amendment.
Councillor Donnelly.
I'm voting for the amendment. Thanks, Jennifer.
Councillor Altaf Khan.
Against the amendment.
Oh Lord. Councillor Gant.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Henwood.
Against the
Councillor Wade.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Tidball. Councillor Tidball.
Sorry for the amendment.
Councillor Mick Haynes. Councillor Mike Gotch. Councillor Rowley.
For.
Councillor Ross Smith.
Against the amendment, please.
Councillor Garden.
Against.
Goddard.
I'll be against.
You seem to have a loop somewhere.
Yeah, if everyone could go on mute, please.
If people could mute.
Jennifer, you're on mute. If you...
Sorry, that's 30 for the amendment, Lord Mayor. 8 against and 2 who didn't vote.
Sorry, Jennifer, I don't think you came to me. It's Louise Upton. I'd like to vote for.
And Louise? Or did I miss anyone out?
Yeah,
Councillor Mick Haynes, Lord Mayor, I think wants to vote for.
Councillor Haynes?
Yeah, sadly, I don't think we can, unless he can use the chat.
And you have a Councillor Archad voting for.
Yeah, I'm voting for.
Okay,
thank you.
For. Right, so I've got 32 for. So that's carried, Lord Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. The amendment's carried. Now we're moving to the debate on the substantive as amended. Who wishes to speak on that? I will briefly say something. I don't think I see any hands. Let me just, there are loads of hands still up for the vote. If you put your hands down, unless you wish to speak on the amendment, I will quickly say something and make a contribution while people do put hands down. I see they're still going down. So as Lord Mayor, and indeed there's many previous Lord Mayors who are in attendance this meeting, and deputies indeed, you know, we are expected to go and visit these sort of twin towns, and quite rightly so. And to my, and I've had the privilege of visiting, you know, Leiden and Wrocław and Bonn, and indeed Bonn several times. And they are, as people said, very enriching experiences. And I tend to think that they fall in, and we need to think about how we do our twin towns in relationship to climate change in the future. I managed to visit by train, and I think I could have stretched that and visited Perm by train, and certainly Padua and Grenoble without any problems. And I think that we need to consider a sort of cluster of twin towns, which are sort of, we are sort of at a level with, and we can benefit from culturally. But mainly they happen to be in Europe, but not exclusively so. And I think there's a second set, which are those who can benefit economically and socially and politically from our engagement. Lyon and Ramallah are two examples of that. And I failed to see that Taiwan fits into any of those categories. So I just a plea really that when we do think about our twin town strategy going forward, and obviously this amendment allows us to think a little bit more about it, that we do consider, you know, the impacts of climate change and globalization and what our response is to that, to avoid, you know, mayors and deputies and many other residents flying around the world when there's no immediate benefit if they're, you know, they're not a Lyon, they're not a Ramallah. And so we do need to give that some thought in our strategy going forward. But I will be voting for the amended motion. So thank you for that. And I do now have Councillor Fry. Councillor Fry, you have your hand up. Oh, you have your hand down. Councillor Ross Smith.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Bit disappointed by your comments there. I think my colleague Liz Wade mentioned Tamcan City. I hope it was. Forgive me if my pronunciation was wrong, but there are already links actually from our city to that city, and that is particularly through Oxford Brookes University, and that's how I know that city in Taiwan. And given that so much has changed with this world pandemic, and that many more people like ourselves this evening are using Zoom on other virtual ways of meeting and greeting and communicating, I think it's a bit short-sighted to say we should just be looking at those that we can reach by train. We can reach them electronically. And I do think that we should be supporting the motion. I'm very sad to see the amendment, because I think, so I did have my hand up to speak to the amendment against it. I think it's actually weakened this particular motion, but I will still be voting for it as such. I think we should have strong rings, and I think we should be the first, Oxford should be the first city to have a link in East Asia. I think it's a missed opportunity if we do not. Thank you.
Thank you. And certainly reframing around online twinning is one way forward. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I came to it with a fairly open mind, and this has been a really informative and helpful debate. Thank you ever so much. My reservations were not really about not wanting to make links with anybody, but really about the practical consequences. And many of these have been highlighted. That I think the reason for the amendment, I absolutely agree with, and I think it's the right step forward. We would be making a statement. It was suggested that we wouldn't be making a statement. I think we clearly would, that we're seeking a relationship with Taiwan somehow. There's a lot of details that need to be fleshed out yet. The council is simply not in a position to say yes to a twinning arrangement until we've got some idea what the consequences are at this end, and the other end. I'm glad to hear that there are real connections. I'm not aware of them, so we need to know more. I think the reasons given behind the amendments satisfied me very much. But I have to say that before we got to the amendment, I was thoroughly impressed with Councillor Goddard's input there, giving us some background on the Taiwanese context, of which I knew something, but not half of what he said. And that was a very persuasive argument for making this a very real relationship. So thank you for that, Councillor Goddard. I should be very pleased to vote for the amendment and the like, and I did come to it with an open mind.
Thank you. We have Councillor Malik.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. No, thanks to Councillor Goddard and Liz Wade bringing this motion. But I think when these twinning motion come to front of the council, we normally have background to it, and this is the first time. I do apologize if this has been discussed, and that's the first time I heard about this twinning connection, which is great. As I said, I think, in my point of view, Oxford is open to anyone to come and ask and approach us. And yeah, I mean, is nice. People can get around by train, twinning, and so on. But if somewhere is far east, apparently you have to use another means. So I think, in principle, this is about more like the process, more than anything saying anything else. So first of all, just coming on and saying XYZ city has a similarity. I can sit down here and read you 20 cities in Pakistan where we got King Edward Medical College, still name of the King Edward Medical College in Lahore, and you got Queen's Mary College, and you have all those English road names still exist there. So there are similarities all around the world, but those people have to come to us, and there's a process where you have a friendship amongst, and then we'll go from it. So that by no means this council is saying no now or anything. We are opening the door for a dialogue and a connection, and we need more information. The other aspect of our life, what the similarity with Taiwanese are, of course there is a university, and we are a very famous university, and we will welcome those things. So this is not about, I think to me is more like a process where we have asked other people to follow certain process, and we only made the exception when the Brexit was happening, and we cannot compare that exception to anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Goddard, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you very much, my Lord Mayor, and thank you to colleagues for an extensive, I think, excellent and fascinating debate. As we've said, we did not support the amendment. We will be supporting, however, the motion as amended. And my colleague, particularly Rod Smith, has already made the point that, of course, we've discovered over the last 3 months that keeping connected with people, even across very, very great distances, does not necessarily mean going and visiting them face to face. I'm not at all persuaded by the worry that a place which is a terribly long way away is necessarily a place which one should not seek links with. And I have to admit, although I don't know for sure, I think it would be a brave, brave person who decided to go all the way to Perm by train. I think it would be quite an adventure. We are, I think, pushing at an open door here, as I've found out over the past week or so. There are people who are interested in links between our city and Taiwan. I've seen them on Twitter. I've had emails from them. There are plenty of people out there. This can be very quickly a grassroots up development, and I very much hope it will be. But in doing this, in passing this motion, even as amended, we will be doing so many valuable things. We will be supporting a thriving but a fragile liberal democracy, which is frankly a rarity across the world as a whole, and maybe in its own part of the world. We will be extending economic links in the forthcoming financial storm which Brexit is going to impose on this nation. The notion that Brexit has suddenly gone away and is not something that we need to react to anymore is not one I think that this council seriously entertains, and it is clearly wrong. We will moreover be standing up for the rights that this council values. These are all excellent reasons to try and make a go of this, and with a little bit of reluctance because of the amendment, I urge colleagues unanimously to pass this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we're going to try raising the blue hands again soon, and do keep the hands up until Jennifer's finished. I know if you drop the hand down, then it reorders everyone and it makes it difficult to follow who hasn't voted. So those for the motion, please raise your hand now.
Lord Mayor, I'm just waiting for the last few to raise hands. Okay, Lord Mayor, I have 37 for the motion and 6 people who have not raised hands yet.
Okay. Would you like to indicate for them how they want to vote? I think we should take even if people are abstaining or against.
Councillor Donnelly would like to vote for.
For. Sorry, could everybody please put their hands up and keep them up if they had them?
Councillor Tidball too, Jennifer. I did put my hand up. Sorry, it took me a second to find it.
And so Councillor Henwood.
Voting against.
Voting against. Councillor Mick Haynes. Councillor Mike Gotch.
For.
And the other one I haven't got a blue hand for is Councillor Gant.
Sorry, Jennifer, I did put it up. I'm voting for the motion.
Thank you. So I have 38, 49, 40, 41, 42 for, 1 against, and 2 no votes.
Okay, thank you very much. That motion is passed. Thank you very much. Let's move on to motion 2, adopting the C40 Mayor's COVID-19 Recovery Task Force. And just to indicate people changing, there will be Councillor Richard Howlett will be seconding, and I hope his internet connections have been sorted. So Councillor Wolf, would you like to propose?
Lord Mayor, yes, happy to do that. We've got some important motions coming up ahead, so I don't intend to speak too long because it's a fairly clear motion. It spells it all out, really. When I saw these points, the principles that the C40 mayors have come up with for Building Back Recovery Task Force, my first instinct was, yeah, of course, it all makes sense. But when I look at them again, I realise that these are not universally accepted understandings of what Build Back Better looks like. In fact, just about every one of those, I suspect, would not actually find support in our own government. So we live in something of a little bubble here, that most of this stuff makes perfect sense to us, and you know, we wouldn't really have a problem supporting it. But actually, an awful lot of authorities in the country would not actually, if they read them properly, agree with a lot of these things about the priorities that they represent. So there is meat in these principles. They do actually mean something. The fact that, you know, we're a city of 150,000 people, and we're linked through this C40 mayors with cities of 21 million inhabitants like Mexico City, means that actually, instead of feeling in a little bubble, you know, believing that these are the ways forward, it's actually quite helpful, I think, to be allied with a massive grouping of over 90 cities of that kind of size. And it does provide a certain amount of weight that cities with whose leaderships believe that these are principles that we should be building back on, will actually give us a little bit of weight when we take decisions and lobby for these sort of policies on the building back. I think that's all I want to say at this point. I'm sure Richard will have things that he wants to add. But to me, might look obvious, it is not obvious. And I think all of these are very sound, simple, but very meaty principles, which I would be very pleased to see the City Council support.
Thank you. I should have mentioned earlier that the group leaders had discussed just having one speaker from each group. Councillor Howlett was going to second. I think Councillor Landor-Mills was going to speak as well. So Councillor Howlett.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, and thank you, Dick, for bringing this motion. I hope my internet connection is good enough that everybody can hear me now. Yeah, I think this motion does a great job of kind of just bringing to the debate tonight the particular political moment that we're in right now, and the values that need to kind of guide where we go from here. And, you know, those three challenges of improving public health, reducing inequality, and tackling climate change need to absolutely guide how we recover from this pandemic. You know, I think we knew that before, but us, as you know, building on what Dick was saying there, us kind of claiming a progressive version of what Build Back Better means is really, really important right now. And so because of that, I'm really, really pleased to be able to announce on behalf of Leader of the Council, Susan Brown, that we have in the last couple of days actually signed up to these principles. So not only are we saying that we need to apply them internally and what we do, but we also think it's really important to be saying to the world, along with these other mayors of Los Angeles, Paris, etc., that these are the principles that we believe in and be part of that global lobbying effort that Dick's referred to there. And I know that this builds on kind of links that we've had with this network before. We'd already signed up to the Green and Healthy Streets Declaration. And I think through tonight's debate, we've seen examples of how, you know, the values laid down here are guiding how we're seeing ourselves coming out, coming through, building back from this pandemic. You know, the announcements that we've heard recently around active travel and bus gates, in particular stuff on buildings. I'm really keen to it's great to hear some Councillor Hayes' answers to Dick's question earlier about the building on the climate assembly, some of the detail on what we're doing on buildings, and I'm really keen that we see more on that, because we know that 81% of our city's emissions come from buildings. So I think there's, these are a fantastic set of principles. I'm really pleased that Susan has signed us as a council up to these in the last couple of days. And I think, I hope that we'll all support this motion and continue to kind of challenge ourselves to do all that we can with the resources and levers we've got to meet the principles. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.
Councillor Landor-Mills, I had prior notification that you were going to speak, and I also have Councillor Hayes and Councillor Tarver. So if we're going to open up, Councillor Tarver still has hands up, but Councillor Landor-Mills.
We are very much in a situation where we're reaping a sort of perfect storm of COVID, Brexit, and climate change coming in, and there is a very serious need for us to address these issues in a way that is constructive, and we don't respond with a kind of, I don't know, this terrible sort of build mentality. It's like drill. I mean, it makes me think of Bush saying drill baby drill. I mean, and these policies basically capture the kind of constructive way, a humanitarian and ecologically savvy way of doing this, which is absolutely, it's a tricky path. We've got a very tricky job ahead of us, but I mean, I think it's a path worth taking, and it's really the only path we can take. I think there'll be various things coming in which Oxford as a city, which has shown itself to be enlightened and wanting to seize the high ground in the progressive agenda, will do things such as, I mean, there's recent, with developing further renewables, and for example, and maybe we can take advantage of the new act coming through on local generation of energy. We may also be able to do much more on building to a much higher standard. We need to do these in a way that safeguards everyone's interests, and I think this puts us in the right camp and there's a great opportunity to share experiences and ideas, and so I fully support this motion.
Thank you very much, and thanks for being brief. Dick, do you need to sum up, or can we move straight to a vote?
You can pretty much move straight to vote. Just to say that, Build Back Better Boris style is deregulation, privatisation, and let the wagons roll. And what we have here is something that actually is measured, strategic, coherent, integrated. It all makes sense, and it'd be great to be part of it in the right camp, as Tom Landor-Mills has put it. So yeah, I'll let it go. Let's vote on it.
Thank you. Let's move to a vote. Raise the hands. Those in favour, blue hands. And please keep them up again until Jennifer's done the count and called out the names of people whose hands she hasn't seen.
Lord Mayor, I can see 40 hands in favour. I can see Alex Donnelly's hand is physically raised. So that just leaves Councillor Mick Haynes. How do you vote?
I think we'll take that as an abstention.
Abstention, so that's 41.
Thank you very much, and that's passed. Thank you. And I'm very keen, we have just over 10 minutes left. I'm very keen we get through the next motion on 3. So if people could be brief. Councillor Beeley-Summons, you're down to propose, with Councillor Azad seconding.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The disproportionate deaths of BMES care workers and care workers due to COVID-19, the murder of George Floyd have sparked a protest against systemic discrimination, inequalities and injustice in our community and institutions. So now is the time for change. This is during the pandemic that we realized that the people who kept the country running and safe were the essential workers, the low-paid workers, the ones who didn't have the choice to stay at home, the frontline workers who put themselves in high-risk situations. This country has one of the highest death rates from coronavirus in the world. 500 healthcare workers and care workers died because of the virus, and 3/4 of them were from ethnic minority. So how did that happen? The government has known since early April that more ethnic minority healthcare workers and care workers were dying, but the response to protect them was far too slow. Here in Oxford, we have 2 Filipino porters working at the GR who died from COVID. The reason for the disproportionate deaths due to coronavirus has finally come to light with a second public health report, but not until a few campaign groups and organizations such as the British Medical Association demanded answers. BAME workers, more than their white counterparts, were sent to COVID wards with no or inadequate PPE. They were not listened to when they raised concern about their safety and about the risks. Some didn't even speak for fear of being seen as troublemakers and losing their jobs. Those on precarious employments, zero-hour contract, agency workers, migrant workers, and outsourced workers who are not allowed proper sick pay have no choice. None of the BAME healthcare workers and care workers who died during the pandemic were the ones who made decisions. We have to do better than that. The NHS had to do better than that. 18 years ago, when I was working as a staff nurse at the Wandsworth Hospital, BAME healthcare workers were reporting to the union that they were not protected, promoted, not listened to, discounted. Has anything changed? This government has commissioned lots of reviews highlighting BAME discrimination and inequalities in our institutions. The Lamy report, the Baroness McGregor report, the Windrush report, nothing has changed. And now another commission on race and ethnic inequalities. We have to make sure that the recommendations in the PHE report are implemented in full and with a clear timetable, and we need an independent public inquiry. Council, the life of Black, Asian and ethnic minority healthcare workers and care workers matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Azad, then Councillor Altaf Khan, and if it's just stick to those two and you're brief, you'll just have a time for summing up and we can get this motion voted on. So please be brief.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank you, Councillor Nadine Simmers, to bring this motion to the council, and I'm pleased to second it. The COVID-19 pandemic was worse in BAME communities than those the British population. World Health Organization report shows the death rate among British Black Africans and British Pakistanis from coronavirus in hospital is more than 2.5 times that of the white population. According to Institute of Physical Studies, Black Africans are particularly likely to be employed in key workers roles, which might put them at risk, and older Bangladeshis appear vulnerable on the basis of underlying health conditions. There is a lot of evidence that those of high risk were disadvantaged health workers were affected with COVID-19 in UK, either in NHS or outside in the community. Most of them were from BAME communities. We know that main factors are social and economic inequalities among these minorities. Working condition, lack of PPE equipment, people were scared to speak because of their job contract under immigration rules. Racism in working environment is another factor. The government need to think the health economic vulnerabilities that ethnic minorities are much more exposed to COVID-19. There's need to be more culturally sensitive education and prevention tools to rebuild trust and help communities access services such as contact tracing and antibody testing and proper PPE available in NHS for these workers in care homes and in community setting. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your brevity. So, Councillor Aldaf Khan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will not say what is being already said and repeat, but I have a very first-hand experience of speaking a number of people. My sister works in as a carer, and people don't know how the carer people have faced challenges, not only outside world or dealing when doing their duty, but how they have been affected when you're living with large families, and when you're coming back and your own families are saying you are putting us on a risk with this your job, and the job pressure is that if you do take your holidays and do not turn up, we will not keep you in employment anymore. And what is also been happening is not being very open and communicated. I must say the communication channels from the healthcare sector and the NHS was not very open to take the confidence of the BME community, either their worker or the general public. Friend of mine passed away in Birmingham. His son in the Guardian newspaper says, what is happening is not normal. We need 100% answers. This is not adding up. Another doctor who passed away in Manchester, and I knew through somebody, he was working after his specialization as a contract worker, as what we call here 0-hour contract, and he died. And the NHS said that you are not eligible for any death compensations or the pension scheme or anything, because you were a 0-hour contract and only completing your training. And 5 children and the family left in Karachi couldn't see his last death, because the body could not be taken that time. So he was buried here, and that family stranded there, basically nobody earning. And there was a petition organized, and people here in UK generously paid some money towards that, and that money was sent to his family. So some of these things which has been going through, I personally think a very open and a transparent inquiry needed. And I must also add here that the Laila Moran, who is chairing the all-party parliamentarian group on COVID, she said the country and the NHS cannot afford for these errors to be repeated. There is no time to waste when it comes to learning the lesson from the UK response to the pandemic. So it is very clear that the lesson needed to be learned, and a report needed to be coming out very openly.
Thank you. That's time, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Henwood, I did say, you put your hand up, but I did say that I draw the line under Councillor Aldaf Khan, otherwise we wouldn't get the business done by 8:10. So apologies for that. Councillor Billy Summers, do you wish to sum up?
Yeah, support this motion. We might have a second pandemic, a second wave of coronavirus. We need to learn from the mistake. The NHS, the government needs to learn from the mistake that we've made, the fact that we've taken too much time, we have not responded straight away. Every single the recommendation on the report needs to be implemented in full and needs to be implemented as soon as possible, because we don't want any more unnecessary deaths of healthcare workers from the BME community. That needs to be done as soon as possible. We don't need more commission, we don't need more reports. We simply need this government to implement the 7 recommendations in full. So vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I sense there's significant support for this. So please raise your blue hand if you've supported this motion. and keep their blue hands up until Jennifer's had a chance to go through those who haven't voted. So those in favour of the motion.
So, Lord Mayor, I have 40 showing in support of the motion, and can I just check Councillor Donnelly?
4. Thank you, Jennifer.
Or, okay, you've dropped off my screen. Councillor Haynes? And Councillor Gotch?
For.
Okay, so that's 42 for and 1 no vote. So that's carried, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. That motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. That is the last business we'll have time to get through today. We're 2 minutes before our hour is up for motions. So I'd just like to thank everyone, wish everyone well, and see you again. Well, we'll see you again, but certainly virtually at the next full council meeting, if not before, at various committee meetings. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Good night,
bye.
everyone.
Good night. Thanks a lot.
That's all.